Well, hello. I'm Elan Wenzel. I own and operate Element Knife Company in Denver, Colorado. We are on Platt Street in the Lohi neighborhood, and you're inside our retail shop. We are a full service shop, so we offer all of the products, related accessories, knife sharpening classes, and knife sharpening services. I'm a chef by trade. In culinary school, I got a pretty inexpensive set of knives. Forstner. Now, inexpensive doesn't necessarily mean bad, but it was very basic and German, Western European stylized knives. And I was always in love with knives, and I would see other higher level chefs on the resort or in school or classmates that had fancier, shinier knives, and I was kind of always like, hey, what's that and what are you using and why do you like it? And at a glance, one brand may look a lot like another brand, but people tend to gravitate towards their favorite brands. And so that always posed a question in my mind. And so I'd save my pennies and buy up knives and try them out and be like, okay, I see that Wusthof looks a lot like Henkel, but it does feel a little different and different balance points and nuance differences in the handle and whatnot. So that was kind of the start of it all, really, in terms of like my love affair with knives. I just was buying up knives as often as I could afford to, and uh, when I had that opportunity to sell knives, it really turned into like deciding what my ethos was, and it turned into support and education, and I wanted to bring that to the world. It's like when you're in love with something, you want to share it with the world. So it's all like for me and my business, it's all about curating the shop with things that I have used, that I trust, and that I stand behind, and that I know are good. And so that's what we have in the shop here. And there are so many, I have also come to the conclusion that there are so many different types of home cooks and different types of professional cooks to chefs, and that spectrum is really wide. So we really have expanded the types of things that we carry. We have some German, some American, some local, and a lot of Japanese. And we have different price points too to fit and accommodate everybody's needs. So it's quality is important, and often quality is perceived by your hand and your brain even before you're conscious about what those reasons are. The takeaway here is like when you hold something that is quality and well built, you know it. And we don't want to sell cheap stuff. Quality is not only important for the way that it feels, but the way that it performs and the long game. You want something that's going to last through the years, maybe even something that you hand down to folks. So what we look for are clean lines. I'm just going to grab a knife off of the wall. So one thing that's really important is the handle. We want a handle that doesn't have any sharp corners or hot spots, meaning when you hold it and use it for a period of time, it's not going to be digging into your hand. We're looking for, when I talk about lines, that tapers are clean and even from side to side. Fit and finish is really important, and that means like that if there are rivets or connecting points, that when you rub your finger over the top there, a rivet isn't proud, that the tapers from all different angles match. I've seen on some pretty like cheapy or inexpensive knives, like the taper here, if we have a bolster, they don't match from side to side. And so it really speaks to the craftsmanship and how much that they care about their customers and inherently my customers. And it really shows a lot of respect to them. And once again, those types of things that show craftsmanship and quality are really important. So furthermore, that the established sharpened edge is not wonky in any way. If you were to sight down the blade, that we have a nice clean arc. That we have even distal tapers. Distal taper means that from the neck here, it's going to taper towards the point, but also from the spine, it's going to taper down to the cutting edge. And those tapers can be different. In a knife like this, that taper starts straight away, so that the surface of the blade is nice and clean looking, but also nice and clean feeling. If we have a taper that starts at the halfway mark, that the line more or less is nice and even this way. If it is too wonky or wavy, probably an indication that they're cutting corners. And sometimes you can have a knife that's pretty rustic looking. Here would be an example of something that's a little bit more rustic looking. This is a finish called Kuro Uchi. That's a black iron oxide left on from the forging process, sometimes referred to as a blacksmith's finish. But if you look closely, we have really nice clean lines, good tapers. The handle is secure, nothing's loose, everything is even with that fit and finish. So these are important for the use of the knife, the balance of the knife. And when we talk about balance also, we're not talking about balance like a scale, although that could be an indication if it's handle heavy or blade heavy, but really when you hold the knife and it's in motion, so you could, if you're at a shop like ours, you can mime using the knife. We're gonna set up a in-house demo station so you can actually use the knife. But what I'm getting at here is that when the knife is in motion, it has an overall feeling of balance, and that's gonna help the knife disappear in your hand and become an extension of your hand. You're almost gonna forget it's there, and that really makes using it a joy. If you're fighting against the knife, it's just gonna be frustrating, and you're gonna hate cooking, and we don't want people to hate cooking. So yeah, fit and finish, balance, nice clean lines, even tapering, no matter we're talking the blade geometry itself or in the handle configuration. When we talk about how a knife is made, and if we're talking specifically about how a quality knife is made, that the manufacturer, the brand, the maker, the smith, the artisan are upfront and transparent about how it's made, the material that it's made from, the forging techniques, the heat treatment, and all the materials. Because if anybody's trying to hide that, or they're not being upfront about it, it might be a red flag. Now, in regards to the shape, if our customers are not familiar about the shape and what that's for, we love talking to people and getting knives off the wall, and then we can figure out and kind of zero in, or I kind of like a knife pun, I say hone in on what's going to be the best knife for that person. So sometimes people come in and they tell me exactly what they're looking for in terms of a shape. Sometimes people come in and they don't know the names of the shapes of the knife, but they'll tell me what they want to do with the knife. And so then I can take some knives off the wall and make suggestions about that a chef knife is, for example, a chef knife is the most versatile shape, but then something like a santoku, for all intents and purposes, is a small chef knife. That this is kind of rivals versatility to a chef knife. If somebody tells me that they want to slice brisket, then we'll look at those options. And sometimes people change their mind. But yeah, we can really zero in. So really, every knife has a shape name. And so there are, like, for example, a boning knife, and that is for trimming meat and deboning proteins. There is a santoku and a gyuto, aka chef knife, nikiri, and like task-specific knives. There are knives that have other names, and I can just go on and on. But basically, yes, knives are designed for a purpose, and sometimes that purpose is general purpose, and sometimes that purpose is very task-specific. If we look at kind of a classic chef knife, do I have a Western or European-made one? We do carry some of the local makers' knives, and we have some chef knives here. I'm just going to use these three. Kota knives, Dakota Thornton, Akiva Miola. This is another local guy, Aaron Mills with A Mills Cutlery. These are just three basic versions of a chef knife. And once again, a chef knife is a very versatile shape. And when we talk about versatility, we are looking for some things. Handle aside, that's one thing. People's body mechanics vary from person to person, and our likes and our dislikes. So how my fingers wrap around one blade versus another, I may really like one and you may not like that same knife. But when we talk about the shape of the blade, we want something that has just enough kind of a flat area and something that has just enough curve and just enough length. So if we looked at a paring knife, very short, not a good versatile knife. If we looked at a bread knife, it's very task specific. But when we look at these chef knives, that flatter area can accommodate a cutting technique where we might be doing a push forward or a pull back. And so that flatter area or straighter area on a flat surface like a cutting board is going to make really good contact. But if we want to impart a European cutting technique where the blade doesn't lift away from the cutting board, that's a push, pull, and rocking motion. So curve up here will allow the blade to roll back and forth as we are doing our cutting. Now, when we talk about length, that's good for versatility because, once again, I wouldn't want to dice an onion or shred a head of cabbage with a short paring knife, for example, but something that has that blade length will allow me to get through that food product easily and also accommodate clean, uninterrupted cuts. So yeah, something that is versatile, whether it's a Santoku or that chef knife, we have just enough flat area towards the back and just enough curve up front. The lines are blurred these days more than ever, but when we talk about a European or Western style handle, it's going to be a handle that looks like this that most Americans and Westerners would be familiar with, kind of your classic look of 3 rivets, full tang. Tang is when the blade then becomes inside of the handle, and for it to be full tang, you have to see it at the butt of the handle. Not necessarily always from the top and not necessarily always from the bottom, but often it is the full profile of the handle. And often a Western handle is going to have what is referred to as a bolster. It's kind of a connection piece, in the olden days more of a balance point as well, and some strengthening there. Now, if we're talking Japanese, often what is more common these days is an octagonal profile with a hidden tang, referred to as a wa handle. That tang is hidden from view and you cannot see it. They typically go 1/2 to 3/4 of the distance inside of the handle, but there is a lot less metal. So a Japanese handle is going to be more lightweight and feel more nimble, where a Western handle, because of the amount of steel in the blade, is going to be a little bit more weightier. Yeah, and then of course there are some hybrids. When I said the lines are blurred, this is a Western sculpted handle. Kiva does a fantastic job of sculpting these handles. There is no bolster. There is what this piece up here is referred to as a collar or ferrule, but it's going to be a lighter weight knife too, but with that kind of swell in that palm swell and sometimes that little fattened end cap. Yeah. And then we can have Dakota, he's doing Japanese inspired handles here, and I'd say he hit it dead on. It's got that octagonal profile. So those are really the main differences between Western style and Japanese style. As a professional chef, the tasks required of me are pretty broad. So I like to have knives that are very task specific. For those times that I need to get through a lot of veggies, I might use a nikiri or a single bevel version of that called an usuba. Some of those are also very good for some of the cutting techniques that are more Japanese forward, like turning vegetables in your hand and peeling long, thin sheets. If I need to do chives really paper thin, for example, or green onion, I'm going to use a carbon steel blade. Now, the reason for that is carbon, and for those of you who are not familiar, there's a difference between carbon steel and stainless steel, and some of the terminologies out there can be a little confusing. There are stainless steel knives that are marketed as high carbon, and that's true. They do have a higher amount of carbon content, but it is still a stainless steel, meaning that there is enough chromium, 13% by weight, to make it stainless. Carbon steel, molecularly, the grain structure is finer, so they can actually get sharper. I keep telling myself I'm gonna research what that number is. It's not 1% sharper, it's not 50% sharper, but depending on your sensitivities, noticeably sharper. Carbon steel also has really good wear resistance and typically a higher HRC Rockwell number. That's a measure of hardness for steel. So with the hardness and that wear resistance, they have really good edge retention, so you don't have to sharpen them as often. It's going to stay sharp longer. So carbon steel for that kind of work. If I need to do fish butchery, I want my fish butchery knife, and then once I get the primals down, I'm gonna go into something a little bit more like this, which is like a chef knife so that I can break those pieces down. But then once I'm in dinner service for sushi, I want my sushi slicing knife. This is a single bevel. Now, also for those of us that don't know, when we talk about bevels, double bevel, single bevel, what that means is down here, there is one bevel and a matching one on the other side, and those come together to make that primary cutting edge. And you sharpen those at the same angle on both sides. And both faces generally have the same taper. But a single bevel knife, the faces don't match. The bevel actually starts here, and from here to here, this is in the middle of some repair, and so you can see these scratches from the sharpening stone, but that whole length is touching the sharpening stone, and the backside is actually concave. So basically we're taking two bevels and removing one of them, so these are very thin and like razor sharp. But this is something that I wouldn't want to cut a fish with because it's too fragile. I'll chip the bejesus out of it. But during dinner service, great for cutting rolls and nigiri and sashimi. So basically I'm looking for something for me that will cover all of my bases. Now at home, I have a smaller selection because I'm not there often, but also I want to keep things simple when I'm at home. So I tend to use chef knives at home for the most part. I do have some like bunkas or sentokus as well for the time that maybe a chef knife is a little bit too much. I want something that's a little bit smaller and easier to contend with. Nowadays, I think in modern homes, people don't need a full knife set. People aren't cooking like they used to. They're generally not going to their local butcher and getting a large chunk of something and breaking it down. And if you do, great, I think that's awesome, but you should have knives that accommodate that. And if you're not doing that, you can get away with either your quote unquote daily driver, something like a chef knife that is very versatile, or a santoku, because both of these really are good for fish, meat, veggies, slicing, dicing, chopping, mincing, and accommodating all of those cutting techniques. So your daily driver, whether it's a chef knife or a santoku, if you are making bread or cutting loaves of bread, then you should have a good serrated knife to be your bread knife. So that could be one, but for households that don't need to be doing that, you can get away without having a bread knife. And so then you might want to have either a petty knife or a paring knife. But a petty knife comes from the French word petite, just means a small knife. In the West, we might call these a utility knife. This essentially is just a large paring knife. Great for like off of the cutting board work, small detailed work, or coring. And then for households that might be very veggie forward, you can certainly get away with using these, but some people like to have a kind of a veggie specific knife, which is called a nakiri. And a nakiri is a Japanese vegetable cutting knife that is square with a squared off nose because their cutting techniques are different than Europeans. I showed you earlier that push, pull, and rocking motion. Well, the Japanese actually lift up and back and cut on the push forward. You can certainly get away with 2 or 3 knives, and then if you get into specifics from there, once again, if you're quartering a lot of chickens and needing to French a rack of lamb and trimming tenderloins, get a boning knife. If you're not doing that, you don't need one. So I think that the concept of 2 or 3 knives is 100% accurate, but I would say tailor it to your lifestyle. Recap of what makes a good knife. Good fit and finish, that when we hold the handle that it feels balanced. That is going to help it become an extension of our hand, and that is going to make cooking more joyful. We're not going to be fighting the knife. We're not going to have that underlying frustration. When we hold the knife, we look for things like nice smooth surfaces. If there are mechanical connections like rivets, we don't want them to be bumpy. Or connecting points here. We don't want the steel or the wood to be proud. And that we're looking for quality in terms of even lines and things that match, like tapers in this bolster, for example, or if we have a Japanese handle that like when this has been cut or ground down or sanded down, that one side isn't taller than the other. So generally, basically just understand quality and trust that where you're getting that knife. If something is too good to be true, if price points are too good to be true, it probably is, and that they're cutting corners somewhere in the production of that knife. It could be in the heat treat, it could be in the materials, it could be in just how it is assembled. So I love saving money, and I never speak against that. But when we're talking about something that we're investing our money into, we don't want to have to buy knives every couple of years, because poor knives, cheap knives, are not going to last. Now, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a quality knife. It just has to be from a reputable maker, a reputable supplier or shop, and that you can certainly get a lot of bells and whistles with lower price points. There is a distinct difference between a cheap knife and an affordable knife. Outside of that, we talked about the balance, we talked about the fit and finish, and understanding it's from a reputable retailer. I think it's really good to go get your knives, to go get your hands on knives first before you buy, because it may not be a good fit for you. So I use the word fitment a lot. I think that's a term that mechanics use, but it's how well two things fit together. And once again, people have different body mechanics. So how I like, and filters, likes and dislikes. So what I like and what fits good in my hand may not in yours. And outside of that, once it feels good and you've zeroed in on that, understand what you want to use a knife for. If you already understand that, then it's going to be an easier time to get quote unquote outfitted with the right knife. But you know, I'm a chef by trade, so I can certainly make suggestions to our customers or answer questions and really help them get something that is good for them. I don't buy into a lot of the arguments about one thing is better than the other, whether it's carbon steel versus stainless, or a tall blade or a shorter blade, or whatever those arguments are out there in the world. It's really what's best for the user. Once again, there are so many different types of cooks, whether professional or home cooks out there. So as long as it's a quality knife, good fit and finish, and a reputable dealer, then you're golden.